Hi guys, hope you're all doing good and hope your preparation is on track. And tomorrow in the morning, episode 4 of the Thinkers and Theories series will be released. So make good use of it. Please like, share and subscribe if you like the Thinkers and Theories series. Now, on 28th of November 2023, let us look at some of the important issues of the day. The first issue is regarding democratizing international tax law. This is to do with the Supreme Court case, that is assessing officer versus Nestle. Okay, so what is this case all about and what is the decision of the Supreme Court is what we will learn now. Okay, before I get into the aspects of the case, you should understand the background of what exactly is happening. Okay, so the government is trying to give effect. The government is trying to give effect to the most favored nation, that is MFN status. It is trying to give effect to MFN status clauses under Indian tax treaties. So basically what it means is, it is trying to give the status to different countries. Now the status is given in a way to make sure that, it assures equal treatment. It assures equal treatment of all trading nations. Okay, that is though the name suggests that most favored nation basically is equal treatment of all trading nations. So this is basically a status that is given by amending the Indian tax treaties. Okay, Indian tax treaties. So this amending of Indian tax treaties will also bring changes to domestic laws. For example, by giving MFN status or by introducing MFN clauses in the Indian tax treaties, this will also alter the Income Tax Act of 1961. Okay, so this is the issue. Okay, now what is the issue? The issue is the government has agreed to give MFN or agreed to add MFN clauses in the Indian tax treaties, but this action is an executive action. Okay, this action is an executive action. That is, the government is trying to pass this order or amend the treaty only with the help of government notification. Okay, so this is not coming from legislature. Okay, and this is coming directly from the executive. Now, is this allowed? Can the executive bring a notification that alters the Indian tax treaties that in turn will have an effect on Indian domestic laws? This is the entire issue that is contention in this particular case. So now, since you got to know the background of what is happening, let us now go and understand what the Constitution tells and what the Supreme Court has interpreted regarding the Constitution when it comes to international tax laws. Okay. Now, two important articles that you should know in this regard is, one is Article 73, another is Article 246. So let us read and understand what these two articles are. Article 73 says that the powers of the Union Executive is coterminous with the Parliament. In the absence of any legislation, the Executive enjoys unbridled powers to assume international obligation without parliamentary approval. So what Article 73 tells is, if there is no legislation regarding a particular international obligation, then the Executive is having the power to create or frame laws. This is what Article 73 gives, or this is what Article 73 is interpreted as. Okay. Now, what is important is, if there is no legislation, then the executive can make laws on that only to solve the international obligation. So, I hope you understood what is Article 73. Now, when you come to Article 246, the Parliament also has the power to enter into and implement treaties and agreements with foreign countries. This is read with regards to entry 14 of 7th schedule. So, Article 246 is also allowing the powers for the Parliament to enter into agreements and treaties with respect to the foreign countries or international obligations. Alright, and also there is an other exception to this. The Parliament in some cases can rightfully delegate the power to sign and implement international agreements to the executive. Okay. Now, for example, if you want an example of this, the Parliament delegating the power for signing and implementing the international agreements to the executive, the example is double taxation avoidance agreement. Okay. So, in case of double taxation avoidance agreement, the parliament has rightfully delegated. It has rightfully delegated the powers for the executive to carry on with the international agreements. It need not, ask the parliament for approval every time. It can take its own decisions and make its own laws. See, the reason this was important is because the double taxation avoidance agreement also has an impact on IT Act, especially the section 90 of IT Act. So because it has impact on the domestic laws, Parliament has given the permission for the amendment in the DTAA by the executive. Okay, so this is what is Article 246. Now, you learned 273. 73 is mainly giving the powers to the executive to make laws, especially in solving an international obligation if there is no legislation. Article 246 is the power of the parliament is also there in order to enter into agreements with foreign countries or international treaties. Okay, now what is this contention that we are talking about is, if you can observe, the executive action is being done over Indian tax treaties to provide MFN clauses. This will have effect on Income Tax Act. Now, if you go back to Article 73, it says that though the power of the executive is unbridled, or there is power of the executive to make laws regarding international obligation, however, they can make laws only if there is no prior legislation. If there is no prior legislation, or it does not affect the domestic laws. Okay, but since we already have a legislation that handles the tax, and any type of MFN clauses will impact the Indian Income Tax Act, obviously so this Article 73 stands void. That is, the executive cannot take executive action alone, or only through government notification cannot amend the MFN clauses in the tax treaties, because there is already a legislation that is there, and this legislation will also be impacted by changing the Indian tax treaties. So let us now understand. So you got to know what is Article 73, and you also know with respect to MFN status, the Article 73 does not stand. So if the government has to introduce MFN clauses in Indian tax treaties or international tax treaties, because the MFN because of the MFN being introduced in the international tax treaties, it will have effect on domestic laws, and because it will have effect on domestic laws, okay, the approval has to come from the parliament. Okay, the approval has to come from the parliament. The executive or the government cannot alone take a call on this. The government has to take a call with the help of the parliamentary approval. Okay, so either the parliament has to approve the amendments to provide MFN clauses in the treaties, or the parliament can provide another delegation of power for the MFN. So the parliament has twofold things that it can do. However, the executive action alone cannot introduce MFN clauses in the international treaties. That is the end, essence of what I am trying to discuss. Okay, so I hope you understood what is Article 73 and what is Article 246. Okay, now look at this particular case, and let us just now, since you got the clarity of the background as well as the constitution, what it tells, now it becomes easy for you to understand this assessing officer, that is assessing officer international tax versus Nestle. Okay, so in this case, the Supreme Court examined whether a government notification is essential to give effect to the most favored nation clauses under Indian tax treaties in view of the interplay of domestic and international law under the Indian constitutional framework. I hope you understood this. So basically what I have just told you, government notification, is it enough in order to approve the most favored nation clauses under Indian tax treaties which impacts domestic laws? Okay, so in this the decision was, international obligation assumed by the executive cannot automatically take effect unless definite legislative conditions are met. So what it tells is, you have to get the parliamentary approval. You cannot do it alone by the executive decision. That is what is the end of this particular discussion. Okay, so they can ask you such such case or scenarios especially in prelims exam. So don't get confused. Executive can make laws in order to make sure that they solve the international obligation. However, the condition is, one, there should not be any legislation, or the condition is it should not affect any domestic laws. Okay. However, if there is a legislation and if there is any amendment is affecting the domestic laws, then The Article 246 is important, which makes parliamentary approval indispensable, and parliamentary approval becomes very important. Okay, so I hope you understood the the interactions or interplay between Article 273 and Article 246. Okay, this is the interplay between Article 73 and Article 246. Okay, so this is about the first issue. International obligation need not be only with respect to tax. International obligation can also be with respect to climate change treaties. It can also be with respect to environmental conservation treaties. Okay, so taxation is one such realm that you can take and extrapolate the interplay of these articles. However, this interplay of these articles can also occur with respect to climate change as well as environmental convention treaties. Okay, so this can be used in wide areas, especially in your GS2 answers, and also there are very high chances to ask scenarios and how the constitution plays, especially regarding Article 73 and Article 246. Okay, so this is the first issue of the day. The next issue is basically talking about poverty. Okay, it's a very good issue that gives you two perspectives. These perspectives can be used in your answers, especially in your essay. The perspectives are very good. There are two ways of looking at poverty. Okay, before I get to that two ways of looking at poverty, let me just give you an introduction of the author, what the author is trying to tell. The author tells, for government schemes, a path to dignity for the poor. So basically, the headline in the paper reads that in DBT, the D stands for dignity. That's what the author of this article says. Okay, so the reason the author tells that D stands for dignity is because DBT has ended poverty parade. It has ended poverty parade, and it has made the government schemes or benefits reach the poor on its own. Okay, so it has ended the poverty parade. Before, what used to happen, it was the poor people who had to go to the government departments to avail the benefits, and this actually affected their dignity. Okay, now because they have come up with DBT, these benefits are now reaching the poor. So basically, the government is reaching the poor rather than the poor reaching the government. This is a very good introduction for any type of essay. Alright, so this shows the watershed movement of governance in India and how DBT has helped create that watershed movement, especially in the governance. Before, there used to be a poverty parade. Now there is no poverty parade because the change in approach is the government is reaching out to the poor, and it is not the poor that is reaching out to the government. Okay, this is a good thing. Alright, now to give you just a background of this DBT, that is direct benefit transfer. Direct benefit transfer was introduced in 2013. However, it peaked in 2017, that is post JAM Trinity. Okay, post JAM Trinity. Okay, JAM Trinity is basically the link of Jandan account, Aadhaar account and mobile number. So by linking this, there was a robust framework created for direct benefit transfer. Okay, since then DBT is used across 310 government schemes. It is used across 310 government schemes across 53 ministries in India. Across 53 ministries in India, 310 government schemes, DBT has been used. Okay, and because of DBT, it is estimated that there has been savings of almost 1.14% of GDP. 1.14% of GDP has been saved. That is why DBT in the international realm has been appreciated as logistical marvel. The reason why it is called logistical marvel is, in such huge population like India, with such huge technological penetration, DBT has been able to take the benefits to the poor, and this shows the governance and how the good governance has improved in India. Okay, again, very good example, very good essay fodder material that you can use in your answers. Okay, now let me come to poverty. Okay, poverty as an issue can be looked under two lenses. One is from the book of, there's a book written called The Rise of Meritocracy. This book is written by Michael Young. Okay, and then there is a book called The Tyranny of Experts. There's a book called The Tyranny of Experts. Okay, and this is written by William Easterly. Okay, now look, both are different perspectives of what poverty is. In the Rise of Meritocracy, poverty is looked as a technical problem. Poverty is looked as a technical problem. So it is looked as a technical problem, and if you have to, that is, it is looked as technical problem. What it means? What does it mean? It means poverty is because of lack of resources. It is because of lack of resources, or it is because of lack of capabilities. Okay, it is because of lack of resources or lack of capabilities. See, the poverty is seen from the angles of either they don't have resources or they don't have capabilities. So what will be the solution? The solution will also be technical. The solution will be provide resources. Okay, provide resources, or make sure that you provide them a nudge so that they develop capabilities to improve. Okay, provide resources, or provide they nudge them so that they develop capabilities to improve. Okay, so this is one way of looking at poverty. This is poverty being viewed as a technical problem, so you provide technical solutions. Because you see poverty as technical problem, you see poverty as due to lack of resources and lack of capabilities, so your solution will also be to provide resources and to nudge them to improve capabilities. Okay, however, this has a very narrow outlook or perspective regarding poverty. Okay, now presently in India, currently, if you look at poverty, it is this perspective which is more broader, which is more inclusive. Okay, the reason it is more broader and inclusive is because experts should stop seeing poverty as a technical problem. Experts must look at the alternative thinking of understanding poverty. They must start understanding poverty from the lines of the poor. They should understand the poverty from the eyes of the poor. That is what this stands on. The tyranny of experts, the author says that the experts should stop looking at poverty as technical problem, and they should start understanding the poverty from the angle of the poor. Okay, that is, if you understand from the angle of the poor, you will understand the historical context why that person is poor. You will also understand the circumstances that led to that person becoming poor. Okay, these two play a very, very critical role if you want to alleviate or remove poverty in a country. Okay, a very good way of putting across how to fight poverty. Okay, so one, according to Tyranny of Experts by William Easterly, he says experts should not look at poverty as technical problem. They have to understand poverty by looking at from the angles of poor people, and they have to understand why the poor people are poor by understanding the historical context as well as the circumstances that has led them to be poor. Now, because of the perspective of the William Easterly, we have got something called right-based approach to fight poverty. Okay, that is, we don't look at the poor people as mere beneficiaries. We look at them as entitled citizens. Okay, we look at them as entitled citizens. So they being an entitled citizens, they are always having the right to basic facilities. They are always having the right to basic facilities. That is, with respect to shelter, with respect to food, with respect to health. Okay, now this entire perspective comes from right-based approach, and that right-based approach comes from understanding the historical context as well as circumstances of the poor. The poor cannot be told as mere lack of resources that has led that person to be poor. There are several circumstances as well as historical context that have led that person to become poor. A very good example in India is, if you look at the poor and if you overlap the poor with the caste of India, most of the lower caste, most of the poor will obviously fall in the lower caste. That shows that socio-economic factors also play a very important role in the poor. Okay, so if that is the case, we cannot easily take the view of technical problem and poverty. We should take a much broader view of poverty and its historical context and circumstances. Now, this way of looking at poverty has led to what is known as right-based approach, and because we have to make the right-based approach most effective, we have come up with something called direct benefit transfer. Okay, so this is an excellent perspective of how to look at poverty, and I hope you got the two views of both Michael Young as well as William Easterly. Okay, so the next issue of the day is surplus liquidity normalization, robust credit growth has bolstered monetary policy transmission. Okay, now there is one more thing that is left out in the headlines, but let me add, there are actually three things. There are actually three things that has led to monetary policy transmission. Okay, monetary policy transmission. So first of all, before I get to that three things, let me tell you what is this monetary policy transmission. See, monetary policy is basically a policy that is done by the RBI. The policy is done by the RBI in order to make sure it balances growth and inflation. Okay, so growth should be increasing and inflation should be somewhat at the comfortable range. It should not increase beyond a point. So one, they have to always facilitate growth, but also they have to tame inflation. This is the dual role of the RBI, and the RBI does this role with the help of monetary policy. Okay, so the next question is, whenever there is inflation in the economy, okay, whenever there is inflation is high in the economy, the RBI through its monetary policy will raise the interest rates. It will raise the interest rates. For example, it may raise the repo rate. It may raise the repo rate. Repo rate is the rate at which the bank borrows money from the RBI. Okay, so by raising the repo rate, the bank's borrowing will reduce. If the bank's borrowing reduces, the money in the economy will reduce. That will in turn tame inflation. Okay, so RBI with the help of repo rate is able to tame inflation. This is what is the monetary policy. Okay, now look at what is monetary policy transmission. So if I take monetary policy transmission, let us say that RBI is there. RBI wants to tame inflation. So when RBI wants to tame inflation, the RBI will increase repo rate. When the RBI increases repo rate, the banks are not increasing the lending rate. There is no change happening in the lending rate, or there is no change happening in the savings rate. See, if RBI is changing the repo rate and if the banks are not reciprocating those changes, then that means there is no transmission. Whenever RBI changes the rates and there is reciprocation by the banks, reciprocation means there is accordingly the changes in the lending rates as well as saving rates in the banks. If there is reciprocation from the banks, then there is transmission. So here there is transmission because there is reciprocation in changing of lending and saving rates. Here there is no transmission. So I hope what you understood of monetary policy transmission. Okay, so if you have understood what is monetary policy transmission, now why is this monetary policy transmission happening in the economy? That's what the RBI report says here. According to the RBI article, there is monetary policy transmission that has bolstered. Okay, let me now tell you what are the reasons for monetary policy transmission. Okay, the first reason is liquidity normalization, the surplus liquidity normalization. The second is robust credit growth, and the third is the most important, that has very high chances of coming in prelims. The reason is the lending rate of the banks. The lending rate of the banks before they were linked to something called MCLR. Okay, before they are linked to MCLR. Now this is known as marginal cost lending rate. Okay, now because in 2019 RBI has now mandated retail loans plus loans for micro and small enterprises. It has mandated retail loans and loans for micro and small enterprises. These loans must be linked to something called external benchmark. It must be linked to external benchmark based lending rate. External benchmark based lending rate. So this I'll call as EBLR. This I'll call as MCLR. Okay. So see, monetary transmission has been successful. One, because of surplus liquidity normalization. The reason surplus liquidity normalization has happened is there was more money in the economy. The RBI through its monetary policy, has increased the repo rate continuously. By increasing the repo rate continuously, it has sucked most of the money from the economy. Okay, it has sucked most of the money from the economy means the inflation is relatively tamed. Okay, so that is why the surplus liquidity normalization has happened. The next is robust credit growth. The reason for robust credit growth is the non-performing assets as a percentage of banking assets has decreased. Because the non-performing assets have decreased, this has helped India solve its twin balance sheet problem. Okay, it has helped India solve the twin balance sheet problem. So now the balance sheet of the banks are also looking good so that they can give more credit, and the balance sheet of the corporates are also looking good so they can take credit. So that is another good thing in Indian economy, which is also helping monetary policy transmission. The last is the lending rate of the banks. Okay, the lending rate of the banks is basically linked to MCLR, that is marginal cost lending rate. However, in 2019 the RBI has told that we have to link it to external benchmark lending rate. Okay, see what is the difference is here in the marginal cost lending rate, it is basically dependent upon the bank's internal decision. So the each bank can take their own decisions in order to link the lending rate. Okay, I'll just go to the next page. See, if you take MCLR and if you take EBLR, MCLR is basically an internal decision of the bank. Okay, that is the bank can take its own call to decide what will be the lending rate. Okay, so let us say that the RBI through its monetary policy increased the repo rate. The bank now need not reciprocate because the lending rate that it is fixing is based on its internal decision. Okay, this is the problem of marginal cost lending rate. It is based on the marginal cost of banks. Okay, it is based on the marginal cost of the banks. So this will have very low monetary policy transmission. That is why what did bank do? Instead of allowing the lending rate to be fixed to some internal decision, the RBI told that let the lending rate be fixed to external benchmark. Let the lending rate be fixed to external benchmark. So when it is linked to external benchmark, it is no more under the control of the bank. The bank has to follow the external benchmark to which its lending rate is fixed. Okay, so what are the external benchmarks? One, it can be the repo rate itself. The second, it can be 3-month treasury bill. The third is it can be 6-month treasury bill, and the next is it can be any other market interest rate. It can be any other market interest rate published by Financial Benchmarks India Private Limited. Okay, any market interest rate that is published by Financial Benchmarks Interest Limited. So the banks have to link their lending rate to this external benchmarks. By linking them to this external benchmarks, whenever the monetary policy increases the rate, since the external benchmarks will change, even the lending rates of the banks will change. Whenever the monetary policy will decrease the rates, because the external benchmark will change, the banking lending rate will also change. So this will be having better reciprocity. Hence, monetary policy transmission will occur much more better and effectively. Okay, so this is what is this article. So I hope you understood why the monetary policy transmission is occurring so robustly. You should also understand not all loans are transformed to external benchmark linked lending rates. There are major chunk of the loans that are still linked to marginal cost lending rate, and that is what we have to move. We have to move from the MCLR to EBLR. Okay, so this is about this issue. The next issue is again an interesting perspective given by the author regarding Indian agriculture. Okay, producing more from less. How Indian agriculture has grown with limited factors of production. Okay, so basically the argument that the author makes is pre-green revolution and post-green revolution. Okay, so here the author tells that land is the factor of production that is highly limited in India. Okay, land as a factor of production is highly limited in India. The reason why the author tells this is, see, this is pre-green revolution. If you take from 1950 to 1960s, the net sown area in one decade has grown by 14%. The net sown area has grown by 14%. So more and more land came under the ambit of agriculture, and this allowed the improvement of agri production. This allowed the improvement of agri production. Okay. However, look how this land becomes limited factors of production post green revolution. If you take from 1960s to 2020, the net sown area has increased by only 3.3%. Look at the difference. In the last almost 60 years, look at the net sown area becoming stagnant. That is, very less area or very less land has come under the influence of agriculture. That's why the author says that we have grown agriculture, though we are limited by the factors of production, especially land. Okay. Now, what is the reason? Here the agricultural production, as in pre-green revolution, the agricultural production happened mainly because of increasing land under agriculture. So what happened in post-green revolution that allowed us to improve our agricultural production? So when this question is asked, the author says that the agricultural production post-green revolution happened because of 4 factors of technology. It happened because of 4 factors of technology, and the 4 factors of technology are the 4 factors of technology that helped in the growth of agricultural production post green revolution. Okay, post green revolution are: 1, the author says, is genetics; 2, the author says, is crop nutrition; 3, the author says, is crop protection; and 4, the author says, is agronomic interventions. Okay, so we are currently doing with respect to genetics, the author gives the example of high yielding varieties of seeds. Okay, high yielding varieties of seeds. For example, the author says in green revolution we used dwarf varieties of wheat. Okay, dwarf varieties of wheat, and the dwarf varieties was the reason why we had such success in our green revolution. So genetics has played a very important role in the green revolution itself. The next, the author says crop nutrition is the NPK fertilizers that we are using. This has helped improve our agricultural production again. Crop protection, the author talks about different herbicides and different ways of protecting our crops from pest attack as well as from attacks from the diseases. All right. The next is agroeconomic intervention. Currently, India is still improving on this agroeconomic interventions. We still have to improve on mechanization. We still have to improve on water saving technology. That is, we have brought up with drip irrigation, but there is still more coverage to be done. And the next is we have to also focus on precision farming. Okay. Also, new agronomic interventions are coming like zero tillage, zero based natural farming, organic farming, market gardening, okay, agroforestry. Okay, so all these are new agronomic interventions that are coming in order to improve the agricultural production. So the author says that we are limited by land, so that land as a factor cannot be increased to improve our agricultural production. So the only way we are able to grow more and will be able to grow more in the future is to focus on these 4 factors of technology, and these are genetics, crop nutrition, crop protection, and agronomic interventions. In genetics, via high yielding varieties of seeds or GM seeds. In crop nutrition, to improve more upon our fertilizers, crop protection, herbicides, and agronomic interventions. So again, you can use these as dimensions in your answers, especially in your GS3 section of agriculture. Okay, so this provides not only about agriculture but also about information regarding post independence. So you can also use this as an analysis in our post independence of how our country has done well in inculcating technology. Okay, and also in inculcating technology as well as in achieving food security. This also shows the governance parameters of India post independence. So you can keep using this in different scenarios. It need not be confined only to agriculture. That's the point I'm trying to make. Okay, so this is about this issue. So I hope you understood this. The last issue is adopt an axolotl campaign launches in Mexico to save iconic species from pollution and drought. Okay, now axolotl is it is a species that is under threat. Let me show you the image of that species. Maybe I have not downloaded it. All right, the image of the species. It basically is a marine species, and it stays in water. Okay, it's a marine species and it stays in water. And this species is under threat because this adopt an axolotl campaign is happening in Mexico. Let me tell that first. This is happening in Mexico, and this axolotl is a water monster. It is known as tiny water monster. It looks like a tiny water monster. That is the nickname that is given. It is called tiny water monster. And the reason why this is important is, look, in the last 2 decades, the main population density of this axolotl species has reduced by 99.5%. Look at the reduction. In the last 2 decades, it has reduced by 99.5% in population density in its main habitat. Okay, in its main habitat in Mexico, it is reduced by almost 99.5% in its population density in just 2 decades. Look at the action of man and the action of anthropogenic activities on ecosystem and environment. Okay, now this axolotl, this species is under threat. It is obviously critically endangered, and this is under threat because of one, water pollution. Okay, the second is there is a deadly amphibian fungus that is growing there, and the next is non-native, that is invasive rainbow trout. There is a rainbow trout. Okay, so because of water pollution, amphibious fungus and non-native rainbow trout, the axolotl is coming under threat. As I told you, this is known as tiny water monsters. I'm sorry, I downloaded the images. I think I've forgotten to put it in this presentation. I'm sorry for that. Please Google it and understand this. See, now why is this interesting? This is happening in Mexico. Then why are we studying this? Is whenever any bird, animal, anything in this news, you should understand its features. See, one of the most important feature of axolotl is it has the ability to regrow limbs, and the reason and because it can regrow its limbs, it is having huge interest in the medical community. The reason is they are researching on its secrets of tissue recovery and healing. How is it able to heal and recover its tissue and develop or regrow its limbs? That is the interest in the scientific community, and that is why you have to know about this axolotl. If you remember, this year in prelims they had asked about orangutan. Orangutan was continuously in news because it is almost going extinct. It is almost going extinct in Indonesia because it is coming under. It is almost going extinct in Indonesia because Indonesia is coming under plantation agriculture. Because plantation agriculture is so extensively done, they are deforesting the evergreen forests, and this deforestation has made orangutan critically endangered. Alright, because that was in news, it translated into the question being asked in prelims. They didn't ask regarding the extinction aspect, but they asked regarding some of the features of orangutan. So in the same manner, you have to understand whatever all animals are there in news, you should understand their features. So the interesting feature of axolotl is it can regrow limbs, and this is of interesting aspect for scientific community because it allows them to research on tissue recovery and healing, especially in animals, that can be translated into humans as well. Okay, so these were some of the issues of the day. I hope it was helpful. If it is liking, please make sure that you like, share and subscribe, guys, and please make sure that you share it with more of your friends so that it helps them as well and it motivates me to do this on a regular basis. I will see you tomorrow. Please catch the episode 4 of Thinkers and Theories series tomorrow, and please give any suggestions in the comment section so that we can make the changes accordingly. Thank you so much for all the love and support. I'll see you tomorrow, guys. Bye.